the change process and how schools change with technology. So then the last piece that we want to look at is culture. And the question is your school culture innovation friendly? And so we want to look at that. And so here's an example. When I was teaching high school, there was a high school teacher who wanted to teach an innovative advanced science class. And he made plans for the class and did a lot of work to get this exciting class going. But as the beginning of the semester approached, there weren't enough students enrolled in the class, and the class had to be canceled, unfortunately. And this innovative teacher was rewarded for his effort by being assigned to teach one period of in-school suspension, very clearly the worst assignment in the school. Nobody wanted to teach in-school suspension. And so this teacher, you think about what this teacher is going through, and he's saying, oh, I tried something and I got punished for it. Now, that wasn't the intention of the administration. The administration had lots of constraints on what they could do. The principal was very nice and very open and very supportive in trying to get this started, but it didn't work. And you know, you can't have one of your best teachers not doing anything or teaching only a handful of students. And they had rules from the state about classroom utilization and that sort of thing. So it didn't work out, and this isn't to blame the principal, but you can see how this feeds into a culture that is not innovative, that somebody who feels punished, even though that wasn't the intention, is going to be less likely to do innovation in the future. So we're going to look at the cultural shifts, and the big thing that we want to look at, and you'll be reading the article from Eli, is Eli's 8 conditions of successful change. And we want to understand that change can't be just top-down, that it's very hard to get change to work and create a culture where people are open to change if it's just coming from the top. However, the administration has to create an environment, a culture that is supportive of change, that accepts change and helps to move things forward when there are changes. And that doesn't, again, mean that the administration can't suggest changes, can't try to enforce changes, but it's a very tricky balance. And if it's just coming from the top and there's no excitement from the teachers who have to implement it, then that's a real problem. So the 8 conditions from Eli, which again you'll read about in more detail, are dissatisfaction, knowledge and skills, resources, time, rewards and incentives, buy-in, commitment, and leadership. And I'll just mention them all briefly, but again you'll read the article to get more in depth about them. Dissatisfaction, we're looking at if you're happy with the way things are, you're not going to want to change. And so it's not a matter of being upset about everything and just totally dissatisfied, but seeing a problem and seeing that there might be solutions for that problem. And so that makes the environment open to innovation. When people aren't happy about the way something is, they'll be open to a solution, an innovation that might help solve that dissatisfaction. Then knowledge and skills. Whenever you're dealing with innovation, particularly technology, you need to have the skills and the knowledge to be able to use that. If you don't know how to use it, you can't use it. And then having the available resources. If there aren't enough resources, that's a real problem. I mean, imagine that you want to use an interactive whiteboard, for example, and you come into to your classroom and you don't have one in your classroom, and you're expected to use one. But to get to that interactive whiteboard, you've got to sign it out 3 weeks in advance, and you may or still may not get it. If you don't have the resources, you're less likely to innovate, less likely to use it. You're going to say, you know what, it's not worth the effort. I'm just going to not do it. So having more resources available can be very helpful. And time is a very powerful thing. First of all, we need the time to play with the innovation and use the innovation. Again, to go through those stages, you can't just, if you imagine the play, use, create model, you can't just jump right in and do. You've got to start out playing with it a little bit. And so having the time to do that and creating opportunities for that time. Many schools have very innovative staff development and teacher workshop days and hours and whatever, and those kinds of things can be used to create the time for people to get used to different kinds of innovations. And then as well, the other piece of time is that, as we said, it takes time to move through the stages. So if you're looking at the 5 ACOT stages, if you start judging them too early, then you know it's going to look like a failure. So you need to give people time to move beyond the early stages and not judge the innovation too early. Then rewards and incentives, having some system in place that incentivizes people. And that doesn't mean that you're paying them extra, that you're giving them treats. It can in some cases. And some of those rewards and incentives are intrinsic rewards, but often building it into a system of evaluation, things like that. You know, if you just say, well, I want you to do this, but there's nothing that you can see from it, no gains in anything in any way, then people are going to be less likely to want to do that. Getting buy-in is huge, and we'll talk more about that throughout the semester, but getting buy-in for the innovation from as many people as possible, as many stakeholders in the innovation as possible. If people are on board with it, they buy into it, then they're more likely to support the innovation. And then the last two have generally more to do with the leadership and the administration, though not necessarily entirely, but a demonstrated commitment from the administration is very important. If the administration, if your principal says that this is important, teachers are more likely to see that it's important, and not just says, but demonstrates in ways that it's important. Demonstrates maybe through rewards and incentives, maybe through time, giving time for the use of this, maybe through sub-days that give you time to do that, maybe through less tangible means. But seeing that commitment, also maybe showing up to the staff development, those sorts of things can be really helpful. And then leadership, things don't just generally happen by themselves, and so having a dedicated group of leaders helping people move through these stages can be extremely helpful.